Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It is a joy to be with you today on the Santita Jackson Show. Let's get this popping here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. There's a lot to talk about today, a whole lot. We are in the throes of this election season. And in fact, I'm in Chicago, as many of you know, and we're going to be hosting the National Association of Black Journalists. And there is a controversy. I can't wait to talk to some people about it. Because guess who's coming to town? President Trump. And they are still trying to get Kamala Harris to make space in her schedule to come to meet the largest gathering of Black journalists in the country. And, some people are saying, hey, you know what? We don't think we should have invited him, but you're journalists. You need to hear what he's got to say. Ask him. I'm just sorry. Just y'all, let us not lose our collective minds at this time. You need to be asking the right questions before you get who you want, get what you need. Ask the right questions. This is not personal, it's politics. So, and which brings us to this topic today. Predictably, I was reading the Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting blog. The New York Times is now calling on Vice President Harris to move right. Now, mind you, the immigration policy of President Biden has really not veered too far from what President Trump put forth and was enacting. Um, Everybody is talking about crime going up, and they said, as a prosecutor, what you need to do is deal with crime. The fact is, violent crime has declined by like 26% in the United States. Property crime has declined by 19%. We've had the lowest rate of physical crime in more than 40 years. We're safer today in 2024 than we were in 1991. Think about that, everybody. So, and who is the New York Times anyway? Who are they to tell us, this New York paper, what the way that our candidate is supposed to go? And you're not giving us the information. So I want to talk with you about that today. We're on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, the voice of progressive Minnesota, and the Santita Jackson Show. Hey, easy peasy. The Santita Jackson Show is on X, on the Santita at Santita J, and or the at Santita J Show. Go there, please, and go to the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. But everybody, please, please, please um, go to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. That is what I need you to do. Because when you go to that channel, Facebook will be nicer to me because we've gotten so much traction. They continue to call me and tell me that I need to get you all over there. So please get over there. Hey, Shirley in beautiful Philadelphia. Ashley King down there in Memphis, Tennessee. I love it, love it, love it. Robert Williams, shalom to you, our brother. And everybody like and share, like and share, like and share. And this is from the Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting blog, fair.org. I've had them on numerous times. They're part of the family here, and I really love the work that they do. As the Democratic Party began to coalesce behind Kamala Harris, the New York Times popular morning newsletter from July 23rd, 2024, quickly put forward the knee-jerk corporate media prescription for Democratic candidates, urging Harris to the right. Under the subhead, Why Moderation Works, David Leonhardt explained that the average American considers the Democratic Party to be further from the political mainstream than the Republican Party. I think that that is not true. Americans believe that the rich do not pay their fair share of taxes. Can I get the panel to agree? Yeah. Well, so do you want me to move away from that? Most of us want Medicare for all. The primary driver of bankruptcies in America today are your medical bills. You can have stellar insurance, but boy, oh boy, it's just happening to me. I get home and I'm like, where'd this four-figure bill come from? I thought I paid you the copay. Really? That's happening to people all over the place, all over the country. And you just keep on going down the line in terms of policy. People agree with America, with Democratic policy. They might not like the personalities as much, the messaging could be stronger. But do you think that she must move to the right in order to become vice president? I didn't say moderate her views, I said move to the right, move away from taxing the rich their fair share of taxes, moving away from Medicare for all, moving away from lowering these prescription drug prices, because Big Pharma's not happy about that. There's just a whole lot that we need to dig down on right here in this season. And shout out to the women's gymnastics team. They won the gold. Yay. But guess what? The men won the silver. And I have to say this. One of the things that's been so moving is that these are multiracial squads. I grew up in a time when gymnastics was a white sport. And then we got Gabby Giffords who came out. And we had some young black women who really broke through that ceiling for Simone Biles and for Gabby Giffords and on and on. I mean, so I want to give a shout out to them because to see these multiracial coalitions getting under the American flag, calling each other sisters and brothers, that's really where we need to go. Now, it needs to go beyond phenotype. What are we going to agree on? But to see where these young people are, they're working toward a goal together. And I just think it's a wonderful thing. And we need to applaud that as much as we need to applaud anything. And all of our athletes from all over the world, quite frankly, because they work so hard to get where they are. So let's get right to it. What about the vice president moving to the right? Should she do that? Should she pay attention to the New York Times? Or should she pay attention to you? Remember, these political parties, they have cultural appeals. Every black person is culturally conservative, right? Yeah, we're not liberal culturally. But when it comes to our politics, I want someone who's going to fight for me on the right to vote. I need to lower these medicine prices. I need. So you end up as my father says, you live under your faith, but you live in your faith, but you live under law. And so I think we need to really look at what the New York Times and the corporate media, the legacy media, are pushing her to do and pushing all of these candidates to do. Sheila Garland from the Poor People's Campaign of Illinois, because they don't want to hear poverty discussed. The chairman of the Transformative Justice Coalition, Attorney Darrell Jones, they don't want to talk about our right to vote. Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson, Esquire, they don't want to talk about education. They don't want to talk about civil rights. So the New York Times, who are you talking for? Who are you speaking for? Attorney Janice Mathis, the National Council of Negro Women. I want you to get things started. Of course, you have been your past senior vice president of Rainbow Push, but you're a civil rights lawyer. You've done so much down through the years, and I want to know what you're thinking, because you're also talking to. I mean, this is our historical organization for Black women. We only make 69 cents on the dollar. We're slated to have negative wealth by 2085. That's down the street. I mean, you just keep on going. Black women, because of our suppressed wages, because of the wages we don't get, we lose close to $900,000 at the end of our work lives. That's about $1 million. What would you like to have $1 million, $900,000 toward the end of when you want to retire? Because we're not retiring, Sheila. Nobody is. Reverend Wilson, Darrell, we're not. No, we're not. You can't.
I retired because I had a union. I was in a union job and I had a
Okay.
union contract and I have a union pension. That's why I'm retired.
Okay.
The
While
pensions
they're
are a thing of
pushing
the past. Yeah,
while they're pushing against
yeah,
unions, because
yeah.
that's right. That's right wing, right? So they want her to move in that direction. So, Attorney Janice Mathis, should Vice President Harris have to run to the right? Should she have to run away from what got her there?
Good morning to your guests and to your audience, and thank you for the invitation. Let me say this: I think that horse is out of the barn. She has already, in these past 10 days, defined herself as somebody who wants to control prescription costs. She wants to make sure prices come down. She's talking about investigating corporations for overcharging people for basic necessities. And Black voters tend to be extraordinarily pragmatic.
Mhm.
And at the top of their list of things they want politically is basic economic rights. They want affordable rent. They want to be able to send their children to college, to retire with some decency. To redefine herself at this point, she'd have to paint herself out of a pretty big corner. My problem with the New York Times piece was the way it was structured. They asked the question, how do you identify politically? Are you a conservative or moderate or liberal? And then they extrapolated from those answers what they thought Black people should want based on their answers to where they line up politically. But that's not the way we think. We can have our faith, which leads us to be conservative in certain matters. But then on the other hand, we want basic rights to survive and to thrive. And when she says we're not going back, she's limited in how much she can redefine herself at this point, even after a relatively short period of time. How would she explain? All of a sudden, you don't believe in controlling healthcare costs. You don't believe in reducing prescription payments. I think it's too late for that. And I think it's disingenuous because I think Black voters, like they usually do, are going to vote for what they think is in their economic interest.
Hmm. Attorney Daryl Jones, your thoughts?
It's really an interesting position that we're in with Vice President Harris. And I say that for this reason, is that, one thing we have to remember is that she was not the candidate for president during the primary season. So ordinarily, candidates during the primary season, the old, cliche is that, you run for your base during the primary. So you either, if you're a Democrat, you're supposed to go real liberal. If you're a Republican, you go to your hard base conservative. And then during the general, you need to try to swoo the other side over. So you move back toward the center. That's what the New York Times article, I believe, is sort of based on, is that old model. That old model doesn't work for this election. And it doesn't work for this election because with Vice President Harris, she didn't run as the primary candidate in the primary election. She ran as the vice presidential candidate during that period. So this is the point of time now where she's defining herself. And she's I think they're completely wrong to try to say that she has to become a moderate. She's in the process now of letting everyone know who she is, on both sides of the aisle. Granted, she's run previously, but who she was then is not who she is now as the candidate. So what she has done, I think, very successfully, is to come out to take a lot of the positions that President Biden has taken, to stay in lockstep with him on those positions, and then add her own positioning to it, her own twist, if you will, to the positions that are in place. So what she has done effectively, I think, is that she now has redefined the Democratic Party, what it means to run in this election as the Democratic candidate. And that's why you're seeing so many people trying to scramble, the Republicans particularly, trying to define her and do all of this other stuff, because they didn't have a primary election to do that. That's gone. And so now she's running with who she is. And I enjoy watching it because it appears to me that what she's doing is she's saying, this is who I am. I'm sticking to who I am. I ain't going to change. And, the people that are bringing her, and I think Janice is 100% on point. I think that the people that are bringing her, some of the younger voters that have tuned in for her, some of the voters of colors that have tuned in for her, they like who she is. So they don't want her to stray from any of the positions she's taken. They like the realness of it. And that's how she's coming across. So I think the New York Times is using an old system on a new day, and it doesn't fit. And Vice President Harris is doing precisely what she needs to do. She's in the position she needs to be in, and everyone that's on the political side trying to figure it out, they're pretty much kind of confused because she's already made this definition. So in terms of what I see, What I see, and I just want to throw this last piece in there because it really bothered me when he said it. James Carville came out the other day and said that they need to, what was the word? Temper it down. They're too excited with Kamala Harris's candidacy. The word he used was giddy. They're too giddy about it because the Republicans are going to come back and they're going to do this and that. You know what, Santita? We have every right to be giddy. We have every right to be excited. We have every right to stand with our candidate and do as much as we can do. So that thinking of bringing it down a notch, not being giddy, prepare for the bottom and the attacks, I think that's a different way of thinking. And the way we are right now, I think that we need to continue with the spirit that's there for if I were advising Vice President Harris, I'd say continue with the spirit, continue with the positions that you've taken, and don't listen to the clatter that's out there asking you to change positions or to moderate your position. Be who you are, because that's who the young voters and the voters that are supporting you want you to be.
Hey, everybody, please go to the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page and the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. We want you to join in with Laura Bell and Dave Dowling and Andre and Ashley down there in Memphis. And Dave is up in Canada. That's right. And Jewel and Shirley from beautiful Philadelphia. Samantha. Hey, everybody. Hey, hey, hey. At AM 950 Radio in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Paula. How you doing, easy peasy? How you doing, sweetie? And of course, the Rainbow Push International Conferences, the 15th through the 18th. We'll be talking about these issues because it's when people start running for office, everybody, it's always a negotiation. You have people because they're the standard bearer for the party. You have several wings in the party, and you have people who are progressive. You have people who are liberal. You have people who are right wing. You have people who are kind of moderate. And so everybody's pulling now. Everybody's got an idea. So, Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson, where do you think she should go? Because when the New York Times starts pulling at you, then that means the LA Times, that's the Washington Post, that's corporate media.
Well, I think that she did not get to this moment with the New York Times or the LA Times. She is in a moment. She's a part of a movement that people are pushing her forward. They didn't predict this. They couldn't have imagined this. Her voice has been muted for almost 4 years as vice president. And finally, we get to see the Kamala Harris that many of us knew her to be. This is a moment that God has propelled her into center stage. And there's nothing the New York Times, the LA Times, or any of the familiar news pundits can do with her. She's shaped by history. And she's shaped by a moment that will propel her into the presidency, in my opinion. And so I think that she has to continue to follow the wave of the people who get to vote for her. The New York Times doesn't get one vote, nor do any of these other outlets. I think that the traditional media has been traditionally opposed to who we are and what we want as a people. And so I don't follow those pundits, papers. I don't follow Carville, who comes up with all kind of crazy ideas. This is beyond his power. It was not in the scheme of things for this moment to occur. And so I think they are trying to figure out what happened. I know you remember, Santita and others, when Harold Washington was running for mayor, and you had the two top opinion leaders in the media sitting that night, election night, trying to figure out what happened. Because they didn't count Harold in at all while people were doing dollar in a barrel for Harold and printing their own buttons and stuff. They sat there and they said, what the heck happened here? I mean, they just couldn't imagine it. This wave that she has, they can't imagine. Now, they could imagine what is happening when Trump took over the Republican Party. But they had the Democrats were on the map, and they were counting them out 1, 2, 3, and up comes Kamala. After Biden said, "I'm not going any further."
It's a very interesting time. I'm wondering how this is all going to work out. I mean, it's just real interesting. Sheila Garland, talk to us. What do you see?
Well, I'm with the Poor People's Campaign and National Call for Moral Revival. So we don't endorse. We are nonpartisan. But I do want to, I mean, I think this is an interesting discussion because nobody in the mainstream media is mentioning the fact that poverty is the fourth leading cause of death. That in most counties, and not almost, in every county in this country, people on federal minimum wage cannot afford a 2-bedroom apartment. You know, nobody is talking about the fact that there are 140 million and growing. Let mainstream media talk about what's important to the people who are bound up in this process and who want to see some relief. You know, and I think on the other side, from the political side, at least as far as I can see, the progressive wing of the Democratic Party has been locked out. I don't see Kamala Harris really making the kinds of comments around what's happening in Gaza. You know, Detroit and the uncommitted movement they're now endorsing Jill Stein, and people are going to say this is, a non-entity, but that's a reality that the Democratic Party has to deal with. And if Jill Stein and her policies say, listen, I'm 100% on board for a ceasefire. I mean, things are ramping up in Israel and the Middle East. This could pull the entire world into a major war. And to have a candidate who's milquetoast at best on this issue is dangerous for all of us. And so so I think, this whole idea around Medicare for all, I can remember back in the day when I was fighting for an expansion of healthcare for all. This is something that folks in your family, Santita, have fought for. You know what I'm saying? I remember your brother was relentless on this issue of poverty and healthcare. That's why he was always my man. I always loved your brother.
Oh, Congressman Jesse Jackson.
Yeah. And you don't have candidates who are that, including Kamala. She's not relentless on this issue that we got to have healthcare for all, because 75% of people in this country, regardless of their alleged party affiliation, want healthcare. They don't like the system that we have. It's not even a system. It's a hodgepodge centered in Wall Street. That's where healthcare derived from. Wall Street controls our economy and dictates what's going to happen, and candidates go along with that. When we proposed in Chicago a policy that would shift, the head of the Mercantile Exchange, he couldn't even give a number of how much money gets exchanged every night right here in Chicago in the market here. We proposed a tiny tax that could have generated, based on the numbers that we had, over $350 billion with a B dollars annually to take care of people here in Illinois. And when these folks show up, the atmosphere in the room changes and our politicians fold. And I say that because and I always talk about growing up in Flint, in the Midwest, and those people we see where the country is headed. We're talking about increasingly laborless production. When you have laborless production, that means people can't earn wages. When people can't earn wages, that means people fall into poverty. So this is only going to increase and intensify. That means we have a crisis in our economy. And until we understand the policies that can address the crisis now, until we can get to something else, all this other stuff for me and for the 140 million people and more who are dying of poverty and who can't, make rent, or, who are in medical debt, these conversations it's like blah, blah, blah in my head. When I'm walking down the street and I see mothers and children on the sidewalk begging in Chicago, which is one of the wealthiest cities in the world, there's something wrong. And so we get caught up in the drama. We get caught up. We're constantly, pulled off track about what's important to us, and we can't unify. And that's why I'm so excited and I'm so honored to be in the Poor People's Campaign, because we got over 140 million plus. That's almost half the population. That's 43% of the population of this country that lives at or below poverty. That's a real crisis and danger for Kamala Harris or whoever else is in the administration.
And the fact is, at or below is not even near. Because I get picked up in Ubers all the time with people who drive luxury cars, and people who make little more than $100,000 a year or more, they're living paycheck to paycheck in the United States today.
Yeah.
But that's just, the fact is, my brother, Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr., said we're the best dressed poor people on earth. Because there's so much insecurity in being an American. You know that, Attorney Mathis. You know that. I mean, your medical bills will take you under. They
Yeah.
will.
Absolutely.
You can't afford rent. Let alone 99% of the counties in the United States have it is unaffordable for Americans to purchase houses in the United States today. Starter houses are moving toward the $1 million mark. Who can do that? Are you serious right now?
When $7.95 is the federal minimum wage.
And I'm fighting for 15. When the economists tell me that I need to really make well north of $25 an hour just to keep my head above water. Attorney Anastasia Sanat should, from the Haitian American Lawyers Association, should Kamala move to the right? Maybe if she moves, I know certainly if she moves to the right, we won't hear about Haiti.
Yeah.
I know that.
Oh,
Well, no, I think you would hear about Haiti because it's still related to immigration. First of all, good morning. Thank you for having me here.
Let me tell you what we're going to do is beat you at the border like we did the last time.
That's terrible. That's
no.
terrible.
Oh,
That's a
no,
terrible image.
no. Let me tell you, that's why Maxine Waters, the CBC, well, he wasn't in Congress then, Jonathan Jackson, Kerry Kennedy, all these people ran down to the border. You remember that, Daryl Jones?
Yeah,
Because
I remember.
Well, it was reminiscent of the slave catchers. And
Yeah.
that's why I'm saying, no. We care about you. These folks do not.
Well, I wanted to say that when I read that New York Times article, I actually laughed when I read it because I thought it was kind of an archaic way of looking at the way our voter population is. They're still using that social construct of Black people will vote this way without recognizing the fact that we are diverse, as you're pointing out. So Haiti being the first Black republic, the first independent nation, to be in Latin America. And yet so many people think, well, when we say Black, we really just mean African American. But the truth is there's a number of Haitian people, the number of Jamaicans, Nigerians, Ghanaians, all of these people who are now citizens of the United States that have a right to vote. And even though they may not see it as an issue, it will become an issue because they still want to bring their family members over. And for Haitians, truthfully, they just want to go home. But international policy currently is allowing people to interfere with the governance of the people. We haven't had a president in Haiti, and I say like I'm not a United States citizen. I am. But when I say we, I'm talking about the people of Haiti, just speaking on behalf of the diaspora. They want to govern themselves. Why would they want to be, for example, here in Chicago instead of a warm weather like the Caribbean? Why wouldn't they want to be at their beaches? Why wouldn't they want to be at the hotels that serve buffet meals and have, people doing their laundry and people doing their homes and their lawn care and all of those things? These are the things that I think a lot of people don't consider when they're thinking about the demographic of Blackness, right? The diaspora of Africans peoples. We have so many more things that we want to talk about. And I think at the end of that New York Times article is where he actually got into the truth, which is we need to be focused on the policy reasons to vote. And so I'm not necessarily sure it's totally left to think these things. I honestly believe it is moderate reason to believe that she is a better candidate in all respects over the former president. First of all, reproductive rights. As a woman, let me tell you, I don't have any kids, but I know a lot of women that if it weren't for IVF, they wouldn't have children. And now you want to dictate whether or not the women can use certain kinds of medication in order to acquire these things, whether they can stop things from happening. You're talking about the civil rights of a lot of different people who are currently in jail, who are not necessarily able to vote while they're in jail. And then when they get out after they've been convicted of felonies, they too can't vote, just like former President Donald Trump can't vote with his 34 convictions for felonies. Then we're talking about, and I think Sheila Garland also mentioned it, childcare, healthcare, all of those things are costs that add up to the what we would call in modern society blue collar workers, right? Those are the ones that are doing our construction, that are doing our lawn care, that are doing the laundry, doing things that are not considered quote unquote 6-figure and above jobs. But they can be 6-figure and above, but people don't normally think of the bus driver as a 6-figure earner. And so when we think about increasing minimum wage, I also think that's not necessarily a right way of thinking. I think it's a moderate way of thinking. It doesn't make any sense that so many people in the United States cannot afford their housing, cannot afford childcare, cannot afford health care, cannot even think or dream of paying for an education. So education protection is something that we need to be talking about, because what does he want to do in that Project 2025? They want to get rid of the Department of Education. That's not a good, I mean, that's just not a good thing. They want to say that, well, get rid of the Department of Education, we'll absorb a lot of people and we'll put them under the Department of Justice. But then what happens to the protections of the people who are seeking protections under their civil rights when it comes to age, race, sex, color, disability? Who's going to protect them from that? I mean, if we're going to truly focus on bringing the country forward, we need to step away from the far right, which is what Ron DeSantis and the Project 2025 people are doing, which is trying to literally rewrite history in order to further divide and further, I guess, dumb down the nation, I should say. And so we need to be thinking about those things. And I think if thinking about those things considers a person left, I think that they're not in the right way of thinking. They should be thinking that protecting education so that we can improve opportunities for people to get, for example, free and appropriate education. We need to maintain our public schools. We do need to have more trade schools. We do need to make college more affordable. College is astronomical. When I went to college, it's probably like 10 grand a year. And that was a private institution. That same private institution, 30 years later, is like 40 grand a year. That's ridiculous. How is it that people are going to advance themselves, learn skills, meet people, socially develop, network, all of those things, if they can't even afford to go to those spaces and places? And then, of course, some of the main arguments that people have been raising: criminal justice reform. I've read so many different comments on social media about, she put so many Black people away. She put so many Black people away. Okay, well, a prosecutor's job is to put a criminal away. Now, if that person got caught, they did the crime. If they did the crime, they got to do the time. So my thinking, and it might be more left than it is moderate, my thinking is, after they get released, do they get their voting rights restored? Right? When they're released, how are they able to apply for housing so that they can actually get it? How are they able to then apply for employment so that they're not unemployed and seeking all types of social services in order to live? And then, of course, not commit additional crimes because they can't afford to live. I mean, those are the types of things that I think should be discussed as a moderate issue. And I think more people in the United States are thinking like that. And that's how she was able to raise $200 million in a week. That's
Well,
amazing.
I think, but remember her first candidacy in 2020, Attorney Sanat and Attorney Janice Mathis, it didn't work out.
Well,
And
she didn't have
you
the
remember,
platform that she has now. She had a blueprint. She has a
What
blue plan from what
one
Hillary
moment,
failed to do. She didn't go to
what
Wisconsin. She didn't go to Chicago. She didn't go to any of the.
Attorney
Yeah,
Sanat, not talk over each other. What she
I'm
did,
sorry.
no, it's okay. What she did was, when she announced, she was attacked from California because they lived with her and her policies as AG, as a prosecutor. And she took a lot of heat for that. And that's why I've said, Attorney Darrell Jones, you're a former prosecutor. I've said, look, say, you know what, I wish I could have done some things differently. The laws were what they were, blah, blah, blah. They caught her giggling about some of these things. I personally think that's a nervous tick, but whatever it is, when folks are incarcerated, because when she ran, she got 1% of the Black vote in terms of support. People were not into her. Right now, she's in a honeymoon phase, and people are very excited about the candidacy. That doesn't mean that she's not a worthy candidate. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying we have to be honest about where we are. And
Didn't
so
Gerald Ford
it's all,
predict this?
no, it's all of those things. And I think that you're raising a legitimate point about having people voting rights and their full citizenship rights restored after they've served their time. You're right. But what we're talking about, stay right there, Attorney Sanat, Janice Mathis, you've worked with Reverend Jackson for 50 years, since you were a kid. and you 40 plus, Jeanette Wilson. I'm giving everybody's ages away, but that's all right. No, the thing is, we know about messaging, right? And the messaging is what they want, and it's not just the messaging. The New York Times and um, the corporate media and the oligarchs, quite frankly, want her to go right when Americans' needs are all the way to the left, Janice. I mean, so how is she going to manage that? Or
Well, I
how
think
should
she's
she?
already, I think to some extent she's already managing it. The new speech, the speech that she's using on the stump now, opens with being a prosecutor. She had to run away from that because people thought, oh, you're locking up black men. Prosecutors all over the country win 90% of their cases because they get to choose the cases that they try. There's nothing extraordinary about that. The second issue she's talking about is immigration and border control. She says, I wasn't the czar, but I did this and I brought in jobs and I made Central American economies more resilient. And so as a consequence, border crossings went down. And then she talks about she I thought definitely it wasn't enough, but it was better than what it had been. Your guest was talking about Michigan and the uncommitted movement. That's a scary thing. If that may be her biggest threat, but she carefully stepped 2 steps away from Biden and said, yeah, Israel has a right to defend itself, but it matters how they do it. And that might be just enough daylight between what's going on in Israel and what young black and brown folk are thinking in this country to moderate. So I think she's already moderated her views. She's
Mhm.
already calibrated her speech so that it appeals to that broad section. And let's not forget, New York and California are not going to decide this. Neither, frankly, is Illinois. Much as I love true blue Illinois, it's going to be it's going to be those swing states. And if you can get Megan Thee Stallion and Quavo and
Mhm.
10,000 folk under the age of 50 in an auditorium cheering your name, I don't think you have to worry too much about what the New York Times is saying.
Well, and she also has to do what Hillary did not do, these flyover states, because the Trump team in 2016 was surgically precise about whom they went for. I mean, because look, politics has changed so much. It's an analytics game. Internal polling. I remember what the election on a Tuesday, Sunday, the Sunday before. You remember this, Janice? You remember this? The Sunday before, what, 2 days before the election, I was in New York working, and they said that they had canceled the balloon drop. I said, "Oh boy, she's lost already."
And they
They
know it. And
they know it because
Philadelphia,
I'm at the hotel seeing her top people. I'm on my way. This is like 6:30. I'm at the hotel seeing her top people who are still there, people you and I know. And I'm like, what the heck are they doing here at 6:30? And I said to my brother Jonathan, who's now in Congress, I said, she lost. He said, uh, absolutely right. So he said, and he turned me, Johnny is real funny. He turned me to the television set. He said, baby sis, although I'm his big sister, let's go over here. Let's look at this TV right now. He said, this joker is about to run the tables on the United States of America. And it was 6:30. It wasn't even 7 o'clock Eastern Standard. Said he's knocking this thing out. Trust me. And he was the one who told me to not write him off in 2015. I'm like, this is a joke. He said, no, it's not. This is someone who has been in the public consciousness for almost 50 years, who understands people. He's a master marketer, and this is what he's going to do. Look, hey, the Obama campaign won advertising campaign of the year. Remember that?
yeah.
I mean, look, y'all. This is the game that we're in. So my thing is, while we're looking at all of this, and we saw this with Reagan because they packaged a candidate. They took someone from Hollywood. You remember that, Jeanette? They packaged him and made him. He didn't have to say anything. When he came to push, you were like, what is going on here? They knew what they were doing. And I think I want us to be aware because we're going to see the editorials because they're going to come after her like that.
Well, they've been.
Daryl, yeah, I'm sorry. And
I was going to say they've been trying to call her sexist. They've been trying to call her sexist things. They've also been trying to refer to her in some kind of racist manner. You've got
yeah,
African American people saying that she's not black, she's Indian. We've got Indian people saying she's not Indian, she's black. You know, that one drop rule in the United States, I know it applies, but in the essence of things, when I see those comments, I think to myself, so was Obama white because he was raised by a white mom? No, of
Let me tell
course
you,
not, because that's what they're
no.
saying. They're saying she's
Oh,
Indian because she was raised by her Indian mother.
yeah, but what Obama did have to do, and I know this on Christian personal experience, he had to make a shift because, and I told his wife, I said he's going to have to make a decision because Obama was raised by his white grandparents. I mean, Barack used to want to. He said, it would be so nice if we could walk through parks and enjoy nature. Michelle looked at him like he was nuts. And I said, no, but I understand what he's doing because I know he likes to read. She said, you're nuts too. That is not, I've known them a long time. She said, you nutty too. She said, ain't nobody thinking about that. Now, my girl, I'm putting it right out there, right there. She loves sitcoms. Okay. Michelle is not like someone who is like really elitist, not even elitist in her thinking. She's someone who's very, this, you've known her a long time, Reverend Wilson. She is, I'm like, I'm not going to look at a sitcom. She was like, but it's funny. Relax. Come on, girl. I'm like, okay. No, I'm going to sit up and talk to him about books. She would walk away from the table when we would talk about War and Peace. I'm like, but it was great. And I read it like 3 times.
Love that
And
book.
yeah, I did, me too. But she would walk, she'd be like, okay. And I'm like, because I'm not going to lose my girl. I'm leaving you, sugar. All right, boo. It's been great. I'm just keeping it 100 with you. And I'm just saying what we have to do is understand, look, the racist attacks, the misogynistic, the misogynoir, that's coming. Now, what we cannot do is respond to it and complain about it. Okay, let me give you this, Anastasia.
Mm-hmm.
Reverend Jackson's code name from the Secret Service in 1984, you remember this, Janice, you remember this, Jeanette, it was Thunder. Thunder.
Why?
No, because he was a preacher, thunderous, blah, blah, blah. In 1988, it was Pontiac. Now, we're campaigning, is the beginning of the campaign. And then there was this hue and cry from Black people because they said, Pontiac, do you know what that stands for? Poor old N-word thinks it's a Cadillac.
Oh, wow.
People, oh, wow. No, darling. Welcome to America, Anastasia. When you
Well,
had
I
the
was
whole,
born here.
no, that's not what no,
But I
no,
didn't realize that was an
no, no,
acronym. I thought
no,
car in Detroit
no,
first.
no. Don't play with me because I got a grandfather who grew up and died in the Caribbean. I ain't playing that either. Okay, I've never played that game with you. I'm saying to you, I'm trying to help you to understand the 400-year journey. This is how they play it. When you had the whole Jaime Town thing, they sent Reverend an agent named Jaime from Israel. This is Jeanette, Janice. These are the games that
We
they play.
know.
And all I'm trying to say to
Are they
you,
still
to
playing those games? Look at what the Secret Service just did. They messed up royally.
they
The
didn't
lady
mess up.
resigned. This
No,
they.
no,
Oh, you thought that was a
no,
conspiracy?
no, but not a conspiracy. There are plans, honey. People, everybody smelled a rat, and I've lived with them. Ain't nobody making
Oh,
that kind of mistake. You don't see for 92 minutes someone on a roof with a gun, and you keep telling the police, and they do nothing. Nobody felt. I mean, you don't have to like Trump to not like that, because guess what? These are the same people who are protecting Kamala. You better ask them questions. And she needed to resign. And anyone who ignored that, who did not replenish his Secret Service detail and enhance it, it's wrong. And it happened while our eyes were wide open. We're watching it. Oh, well, he wasn't really shot. You know what he was shot at? That's enough for me. I don't like it. Because I tell you what, if I see someone near her, near my father, anybody with a gun, guess what? We are saying, hey, you know what? I'm gonna run up to the top of the roof. I'm gonna scale it myself and take him out. That is a job. They're not conspiracies. I mean, are you for real? They shot John Kennedy in front of his wife's face.
On television.
Oh, wait a minute. In her face.
Yeah.
So don't talk to me. And wait a minute. When they waved off the Secret Service men who were supposed to flank them physically, because
mhm.
there is something on the side of each car where you stand, the Secret Service agent. You never let a president or a protectee be that open. They were waved off at the airport, Anastasi. People are at, that's why no one wants to. What did Trump say when Judge Napolitano, who has a very popular podcast, I knew him from Fox, he said, my disappointment is that you didn't talk about the Kennedy assassination. He said, you know what? If you saw what I saw, you'd shut up too. He said, and maybe one day when I don't have 15 people listening on the phone, I'll tell you what I saw. Stop. Let us not be naive. If you have not lived in that space, if you've not lived in that world, you do not know what they know. Trump is looking spooked. He ought to be spooked because these are the people who legally must protect him. And they legally must protect Kamala. I'm just saying. Enough already. All the lights between the Lorraine Motel in West Memphis, Arkansas went green after Dr. King had been shot. A conspiracy? No, honey, it's a plan. The corporate media put his hotel room number at the Peabody Hotel. That's his room number, while he is being more threatened than any man in America at that time. He had to be moved out the hotel, and they moved him to the Lorraine so they get a clear shot at him. Girl, please. Everybody who was with Dr. King feels a conspiracy, no. A plan, yes. He was killed a year to the day, to the minute, that he opposed the Vietnam War. Don't talk to me about conspiracies, particularly since that term came from the CIA to keep us away from seeking the truth.
And remember, he was also talking about uniting the poor, black and white.
That was the big campaign.
Yes, and at the beginning of the Poor People's Campaign, that's when he was murdered. So anytime you start talking about uniting around who we are as a class, whether we're black or white or immigrant, non-immigrant, whatever, that's when we start having to deal with the agenda of identity politics. These are all divisive politics.
Women and going after the military-industrial complex.
Yeah, and exactly.
That's the money.
And that's the money, but also the money that takes away from what we could use in this country, to take care of the population. So that's why our leaders are murdered. Look at Fred Hampton. I mean, we can just go down the line here in Chicago. I mean, we had a city that was run by thugs and murderers. Black politicians had targets on their back when they ran in this city back in the day. So we have this whole history. Nobody who is on this screen has an idea that somehow or another these are not plans, that they're going to try to disrupt what could potentially unite us. I always remember Fred Hampton. He said, "Look, when you start talking about racism, instead of racism, we're going to talk about solidarity." And that's how he was able to build the original Rainbow Coalition.
Well, which is what Dr. King was talking about.
Yep.
The mission statement of SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, was to save the soul of America. I mean, come on, plans. COINTELPRO was not a conspiracy, Anastasi. It was a plan. And
we don't have any facts in order to indicate that this was actually a plan.
No. If you look at the FISA documents, and I know because they have them on my family. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, I would invite your folks to read this book by he's a journalist. His last name is Bevins. He wrote this book called The Jakarta Method. It's well documented, but it talks about the role of not only the CIA but the state in usurping, undermining, using anthropology, culture, all the things that are dear to us in order to destabilize and overthrow democratic governments around the world. And those kind of tactics are used in our country, in our communities. And
That's
so
right.
they perfect it outside, but it gets brought back to us.
And what they don't do now, because if I've got to wrap this up, everybody, after Dr. King was killed, the decision was made, Anastasi, no more martyrs. What they do is they keep you off TV. They give you a good run, and then they render you irrelevant. It's not a conspiracy. It's their plan. You can't stay in power, have this kind of lock on power without having a plan.
So that's why Donald Trump is coming to Chicago in order to speak to the National Black Journalists
And I'm glad he's
Association.
going to do it. I'm glad he's going to do it. He should. And you know what? And Kamala should make space. The vice president should make space in her schedule to be here too. Because
She
the easiest
will.
people, I am a radio host and a TV host, and I can tell you the easiest people to get as guests are the Trump people. The hardest people to get are the Democrats. And it's unfortunate. Robert Patel was on the show talking about it all the time. I know because I talked to other hosts. You got to beg and beg and plead and plead. I mean, come on. But I've literally got I got under a minute for everybody. When you hear my voice, I got to run out because I got to download this thing, and I'm without Chapril this week, and I'm trying to figure it out, but it's all good. Sheila, 30 seconds for you.
I say let's not get distracted by the noise. I think as a community, both black and white, immigrant, non-immigrant, we need to look at each other. Like Martin Luther King said, we are not our enemies. We have something in common, and we need to figure out how to fight together. And then we need to put forth our demands to these folks that are running so that we get the things that we deserve because we work so hard. It's not easy being poor in this country. You got to be smart and you got to know how to organize. You got to know what to do. So we have the wherewithal to organize ourselves. There are 140 million of us and growing who are being thrust into poverty. And that middle is getting shaken up because as this technology continues to be applied, we're going to see more and more and more destabilization in the economy. And these politicians cannot get it with rhetoric alone. We've got to have real policy that makes real difference.
And we're the ones who are going to have to push. Daryl Jones, 30 seconds for you.
Thank you, Santita. I encourage everyone, all the listeners right now, go to vote.org. Start checking on your voting status. Be certain that you know that you're registered, that you haven't been purged. Understand this also. We're 97 days away from election. What does that mean? What that means to me in the voting rights world is that according to the National Voter Registration Act, within 90 days, you can no longer be purged from the rolls. Take note. Go to vote.org, find out what your voting status is, find out where you are to vote. And the next time, hopefully, we'll hear something from the New York Times. It'll be talking about all the ways that legislators have taken action to make it more difficult for you to be able to vote and how to overcome the barriers that they've put in place, Santita.
And I'm going to have you back on, if not tomorrow, the next day, so that we can talk about what happens when you get to the voter roll, I mean, to the polls, and you find out your name's not there. Because we don't pay attention, Reverend Wilson, until we're smacked up in the face with it. Less than 30 seconds for you really is tight.
Well, I think that I would invite all of you to join us at the Rainbow Push Convention this year. It's the People's Agenda. We're going to have the Poor People's Campaign, Reverend Barber. We're going to have members of the DNC talking about what's at stake in this election. And we're going to develop our agenda so that we can hold candidates from the president all the way down ballot accountable. And I believe that this is a moment, a move by God, to allow us yet another moment to save America's soul.
Amen. Attorney Janice Mathis.
Well, we should not delude ourselves. This is going to be a tough, hard-fought battle down to the wire. Don't be dismayed or discouraged when the attacks start to come against the party, against the candidate that you favor. Do exactly what Attorney Jones has said. Make sure you know that you are registered. Georgia just put up a website recently that allows anyone who knows your date of birth and what county you live in to deregister you.
That's right.
We've got an uphill battle to fight. Don't be dismayed. We're on the right side of these issues. And the most important thing that a candidate can bring to a race is authenticity. And I say that for all the candidates. The policies vary, the ability to get them varies, who's controlling the Congress and the Senate will vary. But you need somebody in the office who's got a core of beliefs that's going to guide them through the storms and the rains of politics.
Amen. Everybody, Attorney Sanat, 30 seconds. It's tight for me. I got to get over to the next segment.
Well, I just wanted to say, I think that it's important for people that are listening that they spread the message, share this conversation, this discussion that we're having with their friends and their family, like I did for the other one that you all had, because policy reasons are the reasons why you should be looking at somebody in order to put them in office. And when I mean office, I mean what Reverend Dr. Wilson was also saying. voting down ballot is just as important. We need senators there. We need good legislators there. We need the Congress to match what it is, the energy that you're putting forth. Number one. Number two, I think it's important for Kamala to continue with this playbook that she's got from marketing perspective, because the social media influencers, the television appearances that she's been making, these kind of I'm cool, I'm friends with Beyonce type of image is definitely the way to go in order to reach some of the other people on the outliers. And then finally, I think international policy and immigration reform is something that we really need to think about and consider when it comes to who we want down ballot as well as in our office, because those are the reasons why we're having so many difficulties in so many different areas. We're sending our economy outside of the United States. There's got to be a reason why we're bringing it back, and one of those things can be how we can shift laws to improve the way we live. So thank you so much for having me.
Always, my soror did the mic drop. I love it, but I still love you, my sister in Greekdom, Reverend Dr. Jeanette Wilson, Miss Pink and Green. Hey, hey. Ooh, okay. All right. My brother up on the right hand corner. It's just so funny. I love my Greek people. I love you. Let's talk about this in the second hour on the Santita Jackson Show. Back in just a minute.